everybody. You are very welcome to another edition of Business Block. And Business Block on a Monday is powered by Samantha Kelly, the Tweeting Goddesses Women's Inspire Network. And I have another Women's Inspire member with me today, and her name is Colleen Joyce. Colleen, you're very welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Miriam. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to see you. So, Colleen Irish Travel, what a fantastic company. Tell us about how you started.
How I started? Well, I suppose it was always in my blood and I had no choice but to go into it. I come from a family that had been involved in, I would be the third generation involved in tourism.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Really?
So where would I leave it but be in the middle of it? And as you can see, Kyle Moore is there behind you, and I attended that secondary school.
Kyle Moore Abbey, fantastic. I believe you went to school there.
Yes, I was there for 5 years, and also formed my life into tourism and into travel. So that is where it all started. It's in my blood. I can't leave it behind me, unfortunately, but I'm enjoying every minute of it. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. And your website is wonderful. We'll have a look at your website in just a moment. But you were talking on your website about virtual tours. Can you tell me a little bit more about those?
Those actually started after, well, due to the pandemic, after it happened. Of course, I started going out on my own with Colleen Irish Travel just as the pandemic happened, unfortunately. But I did take my tours online, and a lot of people joined me to hear about Kyle Moore and about Marconi and about Alcock and Brown and the Wild Atlantic Way in general. So a lot of people were interested in finding out, and I suppose it gave them the stepping stone to plan for their future holidays, and that they will come and see these spots in real life when eventually we can all re-travel again, hopefully very soon, fingers crossed.
And was there a point at which you got very worried about whether or not that would happen sooner rather than later?
Yeah, it did actually, because we all thought, and of course, and everybody in business would have thought the exact same thing, because, we'll close for a couple of weeks, couple of months, we'll be back in by the end of the summer, everything will be grand, we'll be back to stay one. So like at the end of 2020, and still no decided whether we were coming or going or opening or closing or what was going on. And because my business, like so many other people in the travel and tourism industry, depend on international guests, because yes, we welcome the Irish and they are willing to travel, but they don't do the kind of tours that I was actually doing. So my market was very much closed at that stage. And then with the reopening of it this summer, a few people began to travel through. So the virtual was my bread and butter for a few months last season. Now, I was a little bit slow to the game, but once it started, then it took off, and I was quite happy with it, And
how did you market that? Because it would be something that I would have to have my attention brought to, because I wouldn't necessarily think of the benefits of a virtual tour.
Yeah, well, I did it. Firstly, I went and I watched every virtual tour around the world, which was very helpful. And of course, I was lucky in the sense that one of my tours was actually within my 5K, when we were on a 5K limit, which was my Marconi and Alcock and Brown one in the Dernagemna Walk. And I was physically able to go out and stand at that site and be able to talk about the different features throughout it. And then as we were able to travel within our county, my city tour of Galway ended up, again, I was physically on site to show the people, so they were able to see the things live and be able to ask me questions, whether it be about Brown's Doorway or whether it be about St. Nicholas's Church or whatever I was talking about on the time I was talking about it,
Just those tours that you mentioned there, I've just brought them up from your website. This is a wonderful website, Colleen Irish Travel. It's .com for anyone who's interested. And it really is fantastic. Again, in the center there, you can see one of the, what do we have, about 10 castles in Connemara or more?
Yeah, we do Castles of Connemara tour, which we operated this year on a private custom tours. So we visit four castles, within a 8-hour period. So we would visit Ochnor Castle. We also visit the very famous Kyle Moore Abbey. So you get to hear tales of me about my school days. I think everybody was tired of me talking about.
it's actually the center one, folks.
That's
that
one,
you're
yeah,
looking
that
at.
one there, yeah.
But in fact, the tours I think that you're talking about are the third group here,
Is
aren't they?
is the third one, yeah, which is Auchnoor Castle is actually on that one there. We also visit Clifton Castle and we visit Ballynahinch Castle as well. And of course, Ballynahinch is a very close to Granuaile, which is the sea pirates, which led ways for people, I suppose, in the entrepreneur world throughout the time, because she actually made strides into the sea and travelled the seven seas, even though the lady's buried above a Mayo, but we claim a bit of her here in Connemara as well.
Oh,
you know.
absolutely you do. And I know I used to be a Bunratty Castle entertainer. You mentioned Bunratty. That you start off one of your tours at Bunratty. Is that which one is that?
That would be the ABC tour, which is the second, that one there that you're in, the one with Kyle in the castle. So we would do the Burn. That's a 3-day event. So we would do the Burn, including Bunratty Castle. We do a day in the Aran Islands, the Cliffs of Moher, and of course my own beloved Kyle as well. So that's why we call it the ABC tour. So the Aran Islands, the Burn, and the Connemara region.
Granuaile, who you mentioned there, she also has a connection with another castle I used to perform in, which is Galway, but it's not Connemara, folks. It's in a place called Kinvara. It's called Dungora.
Yeah.
Dungora, so there's a strong connection there. But you're quite right. I mean, these strong female figures as well. And I don't mean to get on my high horse about strong female figures. We can sometimes overdo that. But my gosh, she is a terrific example of an entrepreneurial lady, as you say, who really went out there and, oh gosh, started her business, became friendly with Elizabeth I of England.
Yeah.
Quite amazing. So you've got all of these stories and you've got, I mean, I've seen your testimonials there, and my gosh, the things people say about you, they rave about you. Great storyteller, the best tour guide we've ever been in the company of, because I mean, when you think about it, we all spend, if we go on a tour, we spend a lot of time with the guide, and you have to like them.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course the tour guide is telling the story, not only is being the ambassador for the region that they're in, but they're also sharing their stories and also being part of building the picture, and for these people to come back again, because a lot of my business would be repeat business. They'd come with me on one tour, but they'd come back with maybe family and friends, and they would ask me to plan their holidays for the next time they came around. For example, I had two lovely Italians with me yesterday on the Castles of Connemara tour. They were on their honeymoon, but what I didn't know was I got a message this morning asking me would I organise a fishing trip for the husband and his male friends that are coming next year back to the west of Ireland. So you never know who you're travelling with until it falls in. Well, if they come back and communicate again as time goes on with you, which is nice. Repeat business is very important in our industry in one way or another, you know.
Repeat business is absolutely vital, and you're so right. And I was just looking here on this page, you've got Experience the Wild Atlantic Way. As you mentioned earlier, you come from, quite a lineage when it comes to tours. Your family would have been involved, etc. When Bord Fáilte started rebranding areas of the country, which I think was a brilliant idea myself, Wild Atlantic Way for basically, the West Coast, and where I am, Ireland's ancient East, for example. How did you feel? Was that something that you thought was a great eureka moment for our business, or did you have to take it on board and basically mull over it for a while and wonder whether or not it would be just gimmicky?
No, I didn't, because it actually, I would say it helps the industry in a way that we now have, as you said, the Ireland's ancient East on one side of the country with Dublin. You've the Ireland Heartlines in the middle, and then you have us on the Wild Atlantic Way. So it was much easier to brand. And then people came back and said, well, we want to visit something. We want to visit the Midlands of the country, but we don't know where to start. Well, then we say, go on and we'll talk you through the Ireland's hidden heartlands, or we go via the other side, which is ancient East or the Wild Atlantic Way. So in one way, it did help us, because it was able to tunnel people into where they wanted to go, and they knew exactly then what sides of the country they were visiting, or whether they want to do a little bit of mix and match and everything else. So in one way, it made our job a hell of a lot easier. So it was a good move on their behalf,
I get you. And what about collaboration? Do you collaborate with people on doing tours on this side? Because I'm I'm not in Dublin. I'm in Drogheda, so I'm right on the River Boyne. I'm at Old Bridge. We've got Tara,
Yeah.
within 15 minutes. So it's actually a very rich area.
Mhm.
So do you collaborate with people?
It's until recently, I would have said no, but now it's something that I'm getting more into, because with all this virtual world and people on Zoom calls and talking to different colleagues and stuff, a few of us have got together and worked. So I would get an inquiry, we'll say, for Kilkenny, and I'd recommend one of my colleagues in Kilkenny. The same for, as you said, in the Hill of Tara, the guides up there, or above in the in the Giant's Causeway or whatever. So yeah, it's something I'm getting more into, but up until recently, no, I didn't do anything, because I suppose in one way I was doing my own thing and I didn't need collaborations to the certain extent.
Well, you wouldn't have. No, I quite understand that, because I know what the volume of American tourists can be like coming through, and certainly in Bunratty, they either came to us at the beginning of their tours or at the end. So you'd Globus and you'd all these big tours pouring through. And that is enough to keep you going in the west of Ireland. It is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were lucky. And to a certain degree, I suppose I stepped away. I went more into the smaller market, in the sense that I didn't have, yes, I still go on the coach with 50 people or plus or whatever, but I moved it down a little bit so that I had a little bit more of a bond with the people that were traveling with me, and I was able to build a better relationship with them.
So how did you go about making that transition? That's a very interesting transition. We're talking about transitioning during the pandemic and
it was something that I looked at, and I still do a lot of cruise ships and stuff like that, and I would meet them down in Foynes, or I'd meet them in Dublin Port, or meet them here in Galway, and I'd see the same people, and it was just a little bit of research. People didn't want to be on that conveyor belt of people all the time. They wanted to stop off in places where locals would know, or the native guides would know, and little gym places throughout the areas. And a lot of people came back to me and asked me, would I talk about whatever, or would I do this tour, or can I visit this? And with all the inquiries, it led me to do what I did. I reduced everything down. The highest number I would have is less than 30 people on my tours, which everybody's saying is mad. You're losing. Yeah, but again, you build a relationship with not only your guide, but with your people on the bus, and the people that are on the tour as well, because we would do a lot of the last time, just before this, we had a lot of solo people coming, people that were single parents that were trying to get away from the kids, or people that had been separated or widowed or whatever, and it was just a nice way of being able to communicate with those people and be able to build a relationship with them.
So what was the biggest change in customer dynamic, I suppose, from let's say the 90s through into this early part of the millennium? Because I remember when I was a young woman, in the West, doing 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week, 3 days off, 9 months of the year. It was all pretty much retired Americans coming through. Your next largest groups would have been Germans, then French, some Scandinavians, but you were usually looking at your 55 plus age group. Has that changed, and is it very different for your smaller tour?
Yes, it has changed, actually. We still have the American market, which would be a big focus for me, but I would also have the Canadian and the Australian one as well. And in that sense, that they would be the older generation that would be becoming the retirees, people that would have connections. But then I also have the younger generation, people with the expendable income that are able to spell. They know exactly what they want, and the sense that they would be a little bit more high end, and they wouldn't mind spending a huge amount of money just to have the guide to themselves or the driver to themselves, but able to see everything as well, a little bit more relaxed. I suppose in one way they're a little bit, I hate using the term, but the snowflake era. Those younger people that are now in their 20s and 30s know exactly what they want and know where they want to go. They're either involved in YouTube as bloggers, or they're involved in social media, so they have done their research and they don't mind paying that extra to get that extra service or that extra little bit that nobody else.
It just I know we're encouraged not to use jargon and things like that, but from an industry point of view, where does your product sit? Is it elite? Would it be luxury? Would it where does it fit if you're not your average tour?
No, I'm not. I sit more or less in the middle of the road, and these will be all contacts. What I have noticed, and I'm looking more into what is happening into next season, that the emails that I'm coming are, these are people that would have been with me back in the pre-pandemic, pre-recession. And their grandchildren would have been with me on family holidays, and then they have moved on. They've seen Ireland on one trail, but they want to see more of it. So they're contacting me to do that as well. And they know what they want.
Oh, so you really have to stay on you've got to diversify then.
Yeah. And I suppose my industry has to change. You know, we cannot, I suppose in one way we looked forward to the Americans coming back. And yes, they will come back. But don't forget, we have a lot more going on as well. And the demand of travel has changed. And we have to be very much on the pulse to see what is going on. Like one year it was all city breaks that people were interested in. Now they don't want city breaks. They want to be out in the middle of the fields, or they want to be footing turf, or they want to be on a cruise somewhere going up the Shannon, and they're the only ones on it. Yeah.
So not your golf tour anymore, where everybody wanted to do the golf courses, or
no, they're still there. You know, they're very much still, they are popular and people are still doing them. But my markets are changing a little bit in the sense that it's and I suppose it's the way my own social media is going, that I am more or less targeting that age group with different ads and different people. But again, they know me. One thing I have, as I said, a lot of my repeat business is people that have been there, whether it been their grandparents or whether it's been themselves, they've been back with us. So I think 25 years at this stage, I've built up a good rapport with a lot of people as well that would want to come with me for that reason, you know.
And Colleen, do you target the corporate sector as well? Would you do corporate teams?
I'm not big enough to target. No, I'm not big enough to target the corporate sector at the moment. I think I will stay with my smaller niche market. Now, some of the corporate world have come to me and asked me to do something, but they're looking at me at a bigger scale, and I'm not at that level just yet, you know.
Okay. And would you have other employees on board as well who work with you?
I'm lucky that I have family members with me, and we're hoping to have maybe 3 or 4 guides on our books next year.
Yes. Yeah,
so
depends on how things go.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to wait till January or February or probably even March before we'll be able to make those decisions, you know.
And just tell me, what would be the biggest challenges when you, right, pre-pandemic, what would have been the biggest challenges on the run up to 2019?
As you know yourself from being in Bunratty, there wasn't enough hours in the day for me. And of course it was something I probably did myself. It was that I was involved in every tour. I was somewhere in every tour, whether I was guiding it or whether I was talking to the people. And a lot of people just wanted me, which was wrong. I can only do one. I'm only one person. So my problem was delegating and being able to have a team around me that was able to do the work for me, which I did do near the end. But it was just a little bit too late. The pandemic got in my way, unfortunately. But it gave me the pandemic. Yes, the country was closed and the world was closed, but yet it gave me time to focus more on what exactly I wanted to do and what tours I wanted to do and what kind of market I was. Like the Derna walk, that came out of being a virtual tour, which now people are very interested in doing. So that was the silver lining to my clouds due to the pandemic, you know.
Yes. Now you're a Women's Inspire Network member. When did you join the network?
Just before the pandemic, actually. Samantha actually talked at a tourism huddle that I'm involved in with a wonderful lady called Tina O'Dwyer, Tourism Space, who's also an inspired lady as well. She and after that, then I got involved in the Women's Inspired group. And it was a conversation with Samantha from listening to her talking about Twitter, because at that stage, Twitter to me was an alien. But I'm getting better at it, thanks to Samantha and all the women in Women's Inspired.
I have exactly the same issue. You know, I took a lot of persuading for a long time. Mm-hmm. But you do need good people who actually know how it works, you know, yeah. and that's where you'll find them. What have you noticed any particular benefit apart from the introduction to Twitter and wise usage of social media? How have you found the experience of being a member of the group? It's
fantastic. My website was actually built by another member of the Women's Inspire group as well. So And my mother broke two cups, actually, two pottery cups, and she was looking for them. I put it out on Women's Inspired Group, and within a week we actually had found the cups. So that just shows you how things work. So it's fantastic. Yeah.
Now, are there particular places that are forever going to be part of the tours? Would you have specific locations that are definitely on the plan, on the schedule, never to be replaced?
For example, the Cliffs of Moher is always going to be there. The Aran Islands is always going to be there. Kyle will always be there. The city tour, whether it be Dublin or Galway, will always be part of it. So you can guarantee there's definitely 4 tours that will always operate in one form or another. Maybe not the original tour, but once those places are visited on the tour, again, you will have to refresh them from time to time, because you can only do the loop of the Aran Islands once, or the loop, the Burn. We have to come up with new gestures in order to find new markets and keep people fresh within it,
Where do you see those new markets being for your size of business?
I think it's probably going to be mainland Europe. We're going to travel more. Really? Again, the genealogy of the Americans and the Australians are going to be there as well. So I suppose in 2 ways, we have 2 different strands of people, the US market, the Canadian, and I suppose the Canadian is the newer market that's coming on board, because a lot of them would have Irish connections. Yes. And are coming back to find family and doing it. Now, geology is not something I go into, but if asked, I will do it. But I think it's probably the Canadian market is going to be one of our biggest markets going forward,
Yes, and I feel that might have been a change that began around the time of the centenary of the First World War.
Yeah,
people reconnecting.
Yeah.
I know I had a great granduncle, for example, who fought. He fought in the British Army, got blown up at the Somme, and then joined up with the Canadians and fought at Vimy Ridge.
Yeah.
And so there are lots of people finding things about their families they didn't realize. And that kind of reconnects you with your Canadian family. I've got a very big Canadian family going back 2 or 3 generations, but I didn't know about them until a couple of years ago. We're just
100%.
reconnecting now. So it's interesting that there'll be more Canadian. Canada's becoming very popular.
It is, and of course it's also popular with the young Irish going out there as well for working as well. And no more than yourself, I have Canadian. My great granduncle went out, and I was actually part of the Canadian police force. And now we're reconnecting with all of those family members as well, which we never knew we had. So it's all, I think once you have some sort of connection to wherever your guests or your people are coming from, it will help you more, and people are more inclined to travel with you, because they feel as if you have that connection, or you know where they're coming from as well,
Absolutely. And do you feel that the connection, the market maybe in Europe may be a little bit forced by Brexit, or has that bitten yet when it comes to your
Brexit didn't help it, to be honest with you. It did and it didn't, because a lot of them would do England, Ireland, Wales, or England, Ireland, Scotland. But now with Brexit, Ireland has either been left out on its own, or it's going to be becoming bigger. It's a market that I don't know which way it's going to go until people start traveling once again, and
see what they want to sign up for.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. How about people who need to pivot or pirouette, as I prefer to say, into an associated area? Perhaps they're going into your business, or perhaps they're collaborating with others and having to change direction in some way. But either way, it's always going to be almost like a new business once that happens. What advice would you give them?
Build a good team around you, actually. Do your research, and have people that build a team of that know that industry that you're going into, or that field you're going into. Without that, and have a good advisor that maybe is not connected with the business, that that will tell you that's the right thing to do, or that's not the way to go, or that's looking at it from a neutral point of view.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point, because I think a lot of us are feeling forced in some ways out of desperation to change direction, and it might be the right thing to do at all.
Mhm. Definitely have somebody that is neutral that can say, no, the grass is not greener on the other side. Stay where you are for a while, or vice versa, whatever way they run with, you know.
Do you feel that that person, if you've come from a situation like you have, where a lot of family members have been in the business, do you usually find that person from within the existing clan, or do you think it's better to find someone impartial?
I think somebody impartial, because they're looking at it through a fresh set of eyes. Fresh set of eyes are always very benefit, and that's one thing where the Women's Inspire group is fantastic with, because if you're having a down moment, or you want to double check something, you can always put it up in the Facebook group, or talk to one of the ladies involved, and they'll say, yeah, go for it, or no, leave it for a while, or that's rubbish.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And what about women in general who are going into business, whether or not they've been, there are women of a certain age, like myself, or whether they're younger. Do you have advice that you would put their way?
I actually have three pieces of advice. One, I would probably say there's no elevator to success. You do have to work at it, and you have to take every step and every level as it comes. And it's hard work. You're not going to be successful overnight. You have to be able to do every aspect of the fields that you're going into. No matter what side of the business is, whether it's from washing the cups or doing a presentation to a room full of people, you have to do those steps. Like, you can't wake up in the morning and decide, well, I'm going to be the CEO. Well, no point being the CEO unless you know how to get there. There is a stairs rather than the elevator, you know.
Agreed. Gosh, that's very good. You have to be able to do everything. You have to be able to go back to the floor as well, cover
Yeah,
all jobs, don't you?
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
What do you find has changed within the business when it comes to grants and insurance and the whole, the requirements of your companies legally? Have there been major changes in the last 15 years on that front?
Oh, 100%. The insurance is a pure nightmare. Like, public liability is gone through the roof. It's very expensive. It's hard to do it. It's something that we need, but it's also the biggest expense that we're paying out with at the moment. I think in the sense that the world has changed. There's a little bit, especially in my industry, in the travel industry, there is a lot of females within it, and they're more coming to the forefront at this stage. Our running costs wouldn't be, to a certain degree, but our biggest running cost is that of the public liability, because we need it, and we need it for every aspect of it. And that would be the biggest cost that we're taking at the hit at the moment. But again, we were lucky, we got a little bit of reprieve when we weren't during the pandemic. So whatever we made, we have now built it up in order to pay for next year's amount that we have to come at, you know.
That's right. And the most unexpected things can happen. I mean, not only with buses and with, accommodation that you booked, but I know I can remember, I wasn't very long with the castles, sorry to hark back to them, but we had a very big tour arrive into Dungora. And one of the gentlemen, he was a rather large gentleman, he was struggling. It was towards the end of the tour. It had been a very grueling experience, I suppose, for him. So we brought him up to the banqueting hall, which was on the second floor, while we did the welcoming speeches for everybody else downstairs. When we went back upstairs, he had passed away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You never know. Yeah. And that's paperwork, and that's, a lot of red tape has to undergo to get that to the next stage and get it ready to. I think it's
you never think it's going to happen, but it can happen.
I actually, when I started doing tours first, one of my very first tours, maybe 2 years into it or so, I had two people pass away, and 2 times within the same tour. And I had just dealt with one, and next thing the other one had moved to the departure lounge, unfortunately. Yeah, 2 on the one tour. But you know what? It made me stronger, and it made me able to say, I can deal with anything. And it's something that you have to, you have to have a certain amount of empathy and grace about it as well. And that did help me. I think everything happens, it gives you another level and makes you a bit stronger, and it gives you another layer to your onion that is built around you,
So then I suppose also taking the company to a different size now, whereas you say if you're talking around 30 people, as opposed to 60 or more, you know, which they used to be, then that means you can offer so much more. You have experience, you know what can happen, you know,
Yeah.
what you can cope with, you know everything, you know all the hospitals around, you know everything that can possibly need to be called on, and how long that's going to take.
Yeah. Oh, you do. And you know, and again, I suppose in another sense of, because some of my tours are transport orientated, I also know where the roadworks are, or where this roadwork's going to be. You know, the city traffic around Dublin, around Limerick, around Cork, it has changed over the years. It's got busier. And you also have to put that in mind, and they'll be looking at you, and you'd send them back an itinerary, and you'd say, well, this is the itinerary, but it will take you 3 hours to get from point A to point B. And they'd say, well, on my Google map, it says it'll take 45 minutes. Well, I said, well, have you seen the city traffic? And then when they get here, they turn around and say, you were right on that one. I said, yeah. The dinners have to be changed, check-ins have to be changed. But again, if they listen to where we're coming from and what we're doing, they'd understand where we are, you know.
How do you find working with the agents? Is that any different? Has that changed over the last 30 years?
They've got a little bit more demanding. They want more things, but they do not want, they want your full time, your full attention, but they're not willing to make monetary rewards for us to a certain degree. And now I don't know whether that's coming from a customer point of view, or it's coming from the agent that's putting it back onto the customer. I think it's more to do with the agents, because they have to try and be that person that can do everything, but yet they forget that they have to communicate with us on the ground that are dealing with the people. But when the people come, they're absolutely lovely, and they're totally different to what the agent has already painted them 6 months beforehand.
Yes, I can quite believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any associations, like we mentioned the Women's Inspire Network, which would be a network for women entrepreneurs, which is very good at what it does, and it's top down. It's you know, the person leading it at the top makes sure that the kind of people who come into the network are of a similar mindset and very helpful, and have something of value to offer other people. Have you found other organizations within your industry that give you help when you need it and that are worth joining?
Yeah, there's it's not really an organization, but it's the tourism space, which is, as I said, mentioned, is run by Tina O'Dwyer in County Clare. And again, they during the pandemic, we used to have hubbles and stuff, and again, I could nearly ring up or email or text or one of them and say, what do you think? And they would say, yeah, go for it, or don't, or whatever. So yeah, definitely for somebody involved in tourism, I would say the tourism space is the way definitely there to go, you know.
That's fantastic. What about the Christmas period now? Are you expecting that to, maybe not this Christmas, but looking a year on, are you expecting that to get busier?
Yeah, I am actually, because even now I'm getting inquiries, and like I only started this pre-pandemic, so I'm a new kid on the block to a certain degree, even though as a guide I'm not. But the inquiries that are coming in are beginning to get a little bit busy. So I'm grateful for next season, and I think it will be very busy. So yes, it will be a busy season ahead of us, I think, you know.
Have you found also that do you have to partner up with transport companies, or have you got your own buses?
No, I have a very good network behind me in two local operators that are there, that, you know, we have sat down and we have planned and say this tour will take off, excuse me, or I would definitely need 3 coaches for X amount of months, and they have put them aside for me. So in one sense, I'm ready for that. But if I go over that, that's when I'm going to be in trouble. But I don't think I will, because I think we'll be able to make them put 2 coaches on for one tour and work on it, but still have 2 guides on it.
And that would still work with the social distancing that people would expect within those buses and within.
You see, we're still running on 75% on our tours at the moment of capacity. So even though I might only have 30 people or 15 people on the bus, I still have to have a huge bus coming with me because they needed that space with social distancing and stuff like that. So it'll all tell after the new year what they come up with and whether we can go back with the normal size and transport and stuff, you know.
And aircon on the big buses.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And you see at the moment,
now.
yeah, and at the same time you're paying, you might only have a small quantity for a small number, but you're paying for a big bus because the operator has to put a big bus out for something that should have been on a smaller bus. So time will tell.
How was the budget for you and grants as well? Are they there available for your type?
I fall into the category where I don't apply. I'm not at that stage where I can get grants because I'm just in between the levels at the moment. I'm neither a guide nor neither an operator. I'm just in between it. But we did take a hit on it this year. You know, we did go back. We did do our tours. The walk-in tours were grand. We were able to manage them. There was no cost in them. But when it came to putting coaches out, there was one or two of our tours that we had to run with 2 people because, okay, it didn't make money for us, but it kept our name out there and it kept us alive and it kept us going out. Like, as I said yesterday, I was out with 2 Italians. But as a result of me going out with 2 Italians, I now have a booking for next season, which will probably counteract for the expense that I had yesterday. Yeah. You never know. Yeah. You just have to take the good and the bad, and that's just the way it is. You know?
And it is about taking risks, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
But you are so professional at what you do, and you've got such a good name, Colleen. And clearly, you know, your testimonials speak for themselves. I'm absolutely delighted to have had you on, and I wish the business every success. ColleenIrishTravel.com, everybody. Irish Americans, Canadians out there, get on board, have a look at her site. I know those castles that you're talking about, and I know the area very, very well. And really, it's a trip of a lifetime, and better still if you can go with a smaller group where you get that one-to-one, almost one-to-one attention, which is fabulous. And you really, really enjoy it. So, Colleen, thank you so much for coming on today. Really enjoyed talking to you, and I wish you every success now with the company.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for having me. I really enjoyed chatting to you.
No, and I could hear a dog in the background giving a nice little shake, I think, was it?
There was, yeah. That's Clusian. He's probably nearly part of the tours at this stage.
I know, I was just going to say she's probably on every bus.
The walking tours more so than the tour buses, but he's there sometimes.
And I can imagine that tail wagging on those walking tours.
Absolutely. 100%.
Listen, thanks so much for coming on board, everybody. This is Business Block. Next Monday, we will also have another wonderful Women's Inspire member on the show, and we look forward to talking to you then. Colleen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.